I'm testing you again. Approximately, when did Jesus ascend to heaven? Around 33 AD. He ascended to heaven. Approximately when did the Bible come into existence? 400. Mathematicians, what is this? Do you realize the Bible came into existence about almost 400 years after Christ ascended to heaven? So what do they do in the meantime? How do they preach the truth?
Orally.
Tradition. Let me read you some tradition along these same lines. Remember? The Bible, tradition, and the magisterium. Can any of those sources disagree with each other? No. Let me read to you some tradition. Has any of you, other than Richard, heard about a church father? Do you know what a church father is?
Yes.
What is a church father?
Priest?
No.
Somebody that has another job waiting for them there, like an elder.
No.
My father was taught by the apostles.
We have the apostles, right? What about the next generation?
They're the church fathers.
The next generation and the next generation are called church fathers. These were the bishops that were ordained by the original bishops, or original apostles. And there's one. He's called Ignatius. This person named Ignatius. This guy was taught by John the Apostle. John the Apostle taught this guy. And let me read to you what this guy wrote, Ignatius. He is writing about the tradition that early church proclaimed. And get this, he wrote this in 110 AD. Was the Bible in existence in 110?
No.
It was 300 years away. In 110 AD, Ignatius wrote about the tradition in regards to this. And let me read to you what he wrote. He says, "You must follow the bishops as Jesus Christ follows the Father." In 110 AD, he says, you must follow the bishops. Those people that were ordained by the apostles as Christ follows the Father. And he says, reverence the deacons. That's another ministry we're going to talk about earlier. In 110 AD, he's already talking about bishops in the church and deacons in the church. And he says, wherever the bishop appears, let the people be there, just as wherever Jesus Christ is, there is the Catholic Church. Also in 110 AD, the church was already called the Catholic Church. Do you know that? The name of our church, the Catholic Church, is already documented in 110 AD. That's how early our church goes back. The Catholic Church was the original church. And here's tradition about this. But the key is, he wrote about, you must follow the bishops as you would Jesus Christ. Because he's acknowledging that they have the authority of Christ. And there's many more quotes on oral tradition. But just to show you, we have books of what these early church fathers wrote. You know, a lot of our Christian friends, they use the Bible to learn about our faith, right? But there's a little problem with that. The Bible ends at a certain time period in Christian history. You know what? I don't know, around 100 AD. That's when the Bible stops documenting what happened in the early church. But what happened in the church 100 to 200? From 200 to 300?
It's carried on.
We have it in the writings of our church fathers. And we read what that early church believed from them. And trust me, folks, you can ask Richard, what these church fathers teach are with the teachings of the Catholic Church. It's all right here.
Man, one little thing. I listened to many tapes of converts, that put out that take CDs, and they said it was the early fathers that were the thing that turned the clock for them. Go on your computer, just rattle up apostolic fathers or early fathers, especially apostolic fathers, were taught by the apostles. And it was these guys that convinced most Protestants that, hey, this is what it is, the same as it is now, not what came in the 15th century. Most people skip that 1500 years, which is like skipping the 18th century in U.S. history. That makes sense.
They have a laying on of hands and they receive communion from the apostles.
It tells us how the early church operated. And it's all Catholic, what they believed.
Okay, but we say this has authority inspired by
Yes,
God.
this-
He says that has authority.
Yeah, this is not inspired.
Right, that's no different. I mean, that to me, that would be like a Mormon, pardon me, saying,
Yeah.
here's my Book of Mormon, this
Okay.
is inspired, or...
That's a valid observation. But let me put it this way. If John the Apostle were to teach Todd personally, okay? John the Apostle teaches Todd, and then Todd writes about what John taught him. What do you think the level of credibility is that Todd writes?
But there were a lot of books that didn't make it because they contradicted. So
Yeah, but that's a different story. I'm talking about what these people who were taught directly by an apostle wrote. It's not inspired, you're right. But what is the level of credibility, do you think?
Well, it's probably pretty high.
It's pretty high. Yeah, and that's what we have to go for. It's not inspired. It's very, good observation. It's not inspired, but
But I'm sure they think their book has a high... I mean, so that's the only reason I'm asking.
That's a good question.
They defend our book, so I'm sure, anybody else with their book...
But again, this is now tradition, one source of authority. Then we combine it with this source of authority. Can they disagree?
No.
No. So we look for commonality, and then we get the church. Can the church disagree?
No.
So then we put all three together. That's how we know for sure. But excellent question. That's how you can test if what they wrote really is true, if it conforms to that and to that.
Well, why do they consider that not inspired?
Because Scripture, we claim, remember, is inspired. God is the primary author. This is not inspired. God wasn't the primary author of this. Just human people were. But, excellent questions.
I like that. It's amazing a lot of people never ever questioned the authority of the people who wrote history of the United States in the 1800s. But they do question the authority of these people. And also, you can go in an encyclopedia, you can go to the computer and bring up these guys' names, and they'll tell you about them. And they also, it's interesting that there's a lot of other people who collaborated that they were in existence in what they did. So that lends more authority to what they have, what they said, even though they're not inspired.
So, okay.
I was just going to say, when someone tells me, well, the Bible is just a book, I tell them, well, I hope you don't have to have surgery anytime soon, because those doctors got their information from a book.
We say this book is above all other books and that God is the primary author. Let me just
Not to discount it so like they try to do.
So let me just wrap it up. Apostles, authority from Christ. The apostles passed on their authority to other men by the laying of hands. They received the same authority as the apostles had. And what is the office called now after the apostles? Bishops. And these bishops passed on their authority, and they passed it on. So we can take right here at St. Pius, Father Fisher. He was ordained by a bishop. And again, that bishop was ordained, and we take it all the way back, and we can trace it all the way back to an apostles. That's why every ministry, ordained ministry in the church, has apostolic authority behind it.